sometimes you have to be a little poetic on Twitter. Sometimes you just can't transfer the title of the article, right? You got to say, hey, look at this. You know, there was an interesting study that looked at emerging resistant trends in MRSA. And what the study did is put it on the shuttle, on the space station.
Oh, wow.
Because under a zero gravity situation or a microgravity, they thought maybe it would mutate more quickly and we can get ahead of mutation patterns. Fascinating, right? So, you know, I wrote a story about that, and you know, bacterial mutation, MRSA, I mean, it was a yawn. You know, most people didn't want to read that, right? But so we spun it, and I said, Elon Musk just launched a lethal pathogen into space.
Oh, wow.
And it might save your life. Well, all of a sudden, everybody wanted to know about the mutation patterns of MRSA. So I think language is effective.
So
you know?
You're right. That's the art of tweeting.
Yes.
So you're exactly right. And sometimes, you know, people in medicine generally aren't the most creative people. We're scientific, we're analyticals. And so being creative is not our strength. So just what you described, you're like, yeah, this topic title boring, no one's going to read that tweet. And you tweaked it and made it.
Well, that's the trick.
And that's exactly what you have to learn. That's the other degree I forgot to get is the creative
writing, right? Wow.
So, you know, we write, we publish studies, but they're scientific. And so creating a tweet that would engage. So when I am tweeting to surgeons, I've got to find a way to make it where they're going to read it. And so, you know, surgeons, duodenoscopes contaminated with. And then now I'm telling them something that I know they probably don't know. So this, you know, gram-negative bacteria called KPC. I don't expect them to even know what it stands for. They're not an infectious disease expert. That's my job as a steward to go KPC, Klebsiella pneumonia carbapenemase, means none of these antibiotics will work. And then I link it to a PubMed abstract that's scientific and factual. But my tweet has got to engage them or they're never going to click on that link.
And there's the duality, right? You have to, you know, we often, the dissemination of scientific information from the professional should sound professional. Well, maybe the domain of Twitter is that, you know, it has to stick to the roof of your customer's brain. And when you can link it to a reference, that's another duality that I think is important. I want to go back to Ebola. And talk about someone on another continent who, you know, who touches us with an individual story, not supported by data. But that was a fascinating thing you were telling me about.
The CDC actually studied this. You know, they were really the epicenter of trying to coordinate the containment of Ebola. And of course, it went to a different level when Ebola arrived in the United States. So I'm going to go back to my surgeon colleague, Dr. Ben Nwome, who is the king of tweeting for surgeons. He happens to be Nigerian. And Ben still returns to Nigeria several times a year and has an amazing mentoring program teaching surgeons in Nigeria how to be even better surgeons. But he had family members, you know, right at the epicenter of Ebola. And Ben Nwome made a tweet when it arrived in the U.S. And his tweet was something on this order. I'm not going to be able to quote it exactly, but thousands have died in Western Africa, and the world didn't take notice or sort of didn't.
Looked away or ignored it.
Right, something like that. But one in the United States and the world stops. That tweet, Forbes, and you probably know this, they monitor the number, top 15 healthcare tweets each year. Ben Nwome's Ebola tweet was one ahead of Bill Gates. Wow. Okay, now you know Ben Nwome has a lot of followers, but not the number that Bill Gates has.
Bill Gates has an infrastructure to drive his tweets too.
But think of the power of Dr. Nwome's tweet on Ebola. And then the CDC actually studied it. It was their most effective communication tool. Why? Because it was real time. Literally real time. They could update the numbers. The other way to do it, you had to log on to the CDC website. I mean, that's just not an efficient way. If you're a surgeon sitting in the, you know, in between cases, you can jump on Twitter in a second from your phone and get an Ebola update. Logging onto the CDC website, honestly, the CDC website's phenomenal, but navigating it is a little complex. You can't find stuff.
You know, the CDC is 10 pounds of information in a 5-pound paper bag.
Exactly.
It's extraordinarily important.
Right, so if you can find it, it's there. But the CDC actually published data, their most effective communication tool to teach the world about Ebola, facts, because there was so much misinformation going on. And as soon as uninformed people were tweeting treatment for Ebola, things that were actually going to harm people.
Yes.
The CDC monitored all those tweets and would quickly put that to rest. This is not accurate. This is not correct. Because people can tweet anything and it doesn't have to be right.